Hey guys, it's your boy Panic Knife here with theawfulgamer.com, and I'm going to be covering the Operator 9 boss fight in Terror from Beyond hard mode on Star Wars The Old Republic. Now, the first thing you'll need to know about this fight is that you have to set up your group kind of specifically in order to make sure that everything works out alright with the phases. We have 2 melee DPS, 2 ranged DPS in our group, so we split them up. I'm with a Marauder, and so is the other Merc in our group. I went blue, which is the first phase. Second phase is orange, third phase is purple, fourth phase is yellow. Now, basically the shtick is you're going to go through and someone's going to push a button, then DPS is going to go and burn down the data cores. Now, the trick to this, though, is that each phase gets shorter, so you're going to need to have your full complement of DPS towards the end. Now, what we did was had one ranged DPS stand in the middle to activate it, and then a melee DPS on the switch in order to start the phase. You're gonna while you're in the center or right after you finish your phase, you're gonna want to pick up your shield probe thingy. There's like a little probe, a blue probe for me, floating around the room in the beginning of it. Now you're gonna want to grab that while you're in the center, kill it, and make sure that you have that debuff or the not debuff, the buff in the bottom of your bar. That's going to be super critical for the second phase of this fight. Otherwise, I sit there and help out with ads, make sure everything's kind of cleaned up, and that's about it. As a tank, you're going to just make sure that you're, it's pretty simple. You're going to make sure that you're picking up all the ads, make sure they don't hit the people that are on the switch because they will interrupt it, and that makes it difficult to keep the phase going. As soon as that phase finishes, you're going to restart it, and it's a lot of rinse repeat. As you see, like I said, there's a little bit less time in the second phase. What we do is we do a focus on the main boss, so that's an Alt F for most configurations, and that gives you the switch timer that tells you how much time you have left. These first 2 phases are the most difficult because you don't have as much DPS out there with our configuration. We had a ranged DPS and a melee DPS in each of the first 2 phases so that we can put a healer in the middle and a tank on the switch during the last 2 phases. That's basically just to maximize DPS uptime. A lot of people call for different configurations there. They might call for, 3 DPS in those phases, but we've found that when we do it this way, we don't have to worry about as much, we have a lot of DPS going out. We don't have to worry about failing the purple phase like a lot of people do. What we end up doing is failing the yellow phase. The yellow phase will end up throwing 3 DPS on the cores, 1 DPS on ads with the tank. This will help kind of thin out the herd and make it so that the tank doesn't have to pop as many cooldowns during that phase. And then we'll continue on and kill the ads after the phases switch from this first data core phase into the final boss phase. Now, if you're tanking, the most critical thing you need to realize is that during the purple phase, during the orange phase and during the yellow phase, when the recognizers come out, one of them will go right towards, or one of the little ads will go right towards the person on the switch. As long as you pick that up as a tank, it's no big deal. This is a pretty easy fight. Everybody has to make sure they get those shield probes because if they don't, you're going to basically cause a wipe during the second phase of the fight. So everybody will have one of them. Now, one of the things you need to worry about, though, especially if you're a tank, is that any AoEs can aggro those things. And once they aggro, they basically stun the crap out of you, which makes it difficult to continue to pick up ads and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, though, this first phase isn't that difficult. It's just sort of a DPS race. Specifically during the orange phase, it's if you have 2 DPS going on the cores, it can get pretty difficult. So what we made sure we did was we had our max DPS took blue spears so that they would be on the console and in the center during the first phase rather than the second phase where there's less time. Now, as you can see, we failed right there, and we had to go and take down the Rectifier. This isn't really according to plan. Our plan was more, actually, I'm not entirely sure. We might have done this, this might have been the yellow phase. If this was the yellow phase, when the Rectifier comes out, then that's what we did intend. I can't remember on this clear if we did that or not. Basically, what will end up happening once you fail a phase is that it looks like we did intend to do that. The Rectifier will come out, which is a massively hitting ad, and then the entire phase will restart, so you'll get the original ads as well. So basically, once we failed the phase, we went and made sure we took down the Rectifier, and then returned to after all the ads were kind of cleared up, we went and returned and down the last data core. What you'll see during this phase right here is that there are 2 phases. After the ads go down, you go on the boss, and the boss does hit extremely hard, so make sure that you're using threat dump mechanics and all that stuff, because if you're a DPS or a healer or something like that, you grab aggro, you're effed. Now this phase right here, as you're seeing, look at the colors on the ground. They should match what you're doing. Now, my guy got both of them there, but what you should do is go and stand on one of those things and make sure that they, each of the colors go through and are kind of wiped out before the phase ends, or else it'll one-shot people. The other mechanic they have during this phase right here is what they call a deletion phase. It'll pop up with a name and a color. Now you're going to need to come up with beforehand the strategy to for who goes first and who goes second. So in ours, we had basically melee, DPS, and tanks go first, healers and range DPS go second. So what it'll do is it'll say, for example, Mr. Cupcake, which is my character's name. It's awesome. Mr. Cupcake has been targeted for deletion, and then I have a color underneath my feet. You will basically run underneath the boss. Somebody in that corresponding color will run underneath the boss with you. It'll stand there. It'll say they've activated deletion shield, and you're good to go. This is pretty much rinse repeat at this point. So make sure you take down the ads that come out. Make sure you take down the boss, and that's pretty much it. So this was a fight that took us a very long time, and one of the biggest mistakes that people make is basically not realizing what the configuration of their group is. Or we had problems with taking down the phases in time. We had problems with maybe sometimes rushing through DPS and the ads would be up at the end, and it would take down our tanks. It's one of those things where you just kind of have to figure out what your group is capable of doing. Now, obviously, if you can't handle taking down both data cores during the first phase on with only 2 DPS, you're going to need to switch it around and have 3 DPS. But the way our group had it, we have pretty outrageously geared DPS, so we were able to do the first 2 phases with only 2 DPS each, and that really helped us out for the last phase. Now, this last thing right here, there's going to be areas where the boss, I'm not exactly sure what the mechanic is called, but he does do sort of a one-hit kill on somebody every once in a while. And what we found is that, and we don't do it this time, but if the tank does an AoE taunt after the end of the that deletion phase there, it will actually prevent the one-hit kill from going out. It seems to be some sort of a threat-dropping mechanic. We're not entirely sure why he does that, but it's pretty much a pain in the ass when it happens, and I wouldn't recommend just letting your healers die. One of the things we're noticing here too is that the deletion phases don't always go out. I don't know if it's a bug or whether it's just something that happens randomly. See that right there? That was the one-hit kill thing that happened. It's going to be hard for him to come back up. I think he goes back down the second time too. We have a really good healer who is able to keep our tanks up and stuff like that. If you have anybody who has damage mitigation things, such as a sniper like me, they might consider throwing down their ballistic shields at certain points, especially during the phase with the where the boss is unshielded and he's throwing out those lasers and stuff like that. That'll kind of help out with their tanks if your tanks don't have that great damage mitigation. But yeah, I mean, basically there's a couple little other points at which you might fail at this boss. They're mostly involving, when those shield probes go out, you need to make sure you get them, even if you're on the switch. If you have, basically somebody can CC them, they can attack them and deal with stuns if they're in the center, and then somebody can go grab, or you can go back and grab it after your phase is done. That's the biggest pain in the ass. Obviously, if you're in the center like I was, it's not that hard to get it, especially if you're range DPS, but... Or even if you're a healer in the center too, sometimes, especially if you're like a SWTOR healer, you can throw a lightning out at it instead of, or during like a pretty easy phase or something like that. But yeah, as long as you get your shield probes, as long as you are able to knock down the boss, the data core's DPS and everything like that, this isn't that difficult of a fight. It's just a matter of coordination and making sure you got everything down pat. Anyway, we're about done with it. We just made sure that our group is overly geared, and it's a lot of fun to do it this way, but a lot of people won't have the you know, the advantages with DPS that we do. Just stick with it. Once you figure out the strategy, it's not that bad of a fight. Anyway, thanks for watching. Gonna continue to bring out hard mode Terror from Beyond videos and Nightmare AC once we get over to it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyway, with theawfulgamer.com, this is your boy Panic Knife. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and have a good night.
Alright. So let's call it a night so we can do this again on